In the darkest corners of the galaxy, where credits flow like blood and life is cheaper than starship fuel, there exists a universal truth that even the most hardened killers whisper in hushed tones. Never accept a contract on human. It wasn't always this way. Once, humans were considered easy prey, soft, slow, and lacking the natural weapons that evolution had blessed other species with. The galaxy's most elite assassins would laugh at the thought of refusing such simple work. That was before the incident on Kepler 442b, before the massacre at the Nexus station, before 3 entire assassin guilds simply vanished. Now, when a human's name appears on the target list, even the most desperate killers delete the file without reading it. The bounty could be 1 billion credits, and still, the response would be the same: find someone else. Because they learned, as all predators eventually do, that sometimes the prey hunts back. And humans never forget a debt. The neon-lit cantina on Zephyr Station buzzed with the usual mix of smugglers, traders, and other questionable characters who made their living in the gray spaces between star systems. Smoke from a dozen different worlds created a hazy atmosphere that burned the eyes and made honest conversation nearly impossible, which was exactly why Crix Vorthen chose this place for his business meetings. The Thicarian assassin sat in his usual corner booth, his 4 arms resting casually on the table while his compound eyes scanned the crowd. At 7 feet tall, with natural armor plating and razor-sharp claws, Crix was intimidating even by galactic standards. His reputation preceded him wherever he went: 300 confirmed kills across 47 star systems, and not once had he failed to complete a contract. Until today. The holographic display flickered to life above his wrist communicator, showing the face of his handler, a nervous Quellan named Boric whose tentacles twitched when he was anxious. Today they were practically dancing. "Crix, I have a problem," Boric began, his voice crackling through the subspace transmission. "I've got a high-value target, and nobody wants to take the contract." The assassin leaned back, his mandibles clicking with amusement. "How high value are we talking?" 50 million credits. Crix's eyes went wide. In his entire career, he had never seen a bounty that large. "What's the catch?" Voric's tentacles stopped moving entirely, which meant he was either dead or terrified. "The target is human." The words hit Crix like a plasma bolt to the chest. Around the cantina, conversations continued as normal, but to the assassin, everything had gone silent. He stared at the hologram for several long seconds before finally finding his voice. "You're joking." "I wish I was." "The client is legitimate. Some corporate executive named Harrison Shin. Apparently, he's been causing problems for certain business interests in the Outer Rim. The contract came through official channels, complete with confirmed payment and detailed intelligence reports." Crix's claws extended involuntarily, scraping against the table's surface. "Boric, you know what happened to the Shadowclaw Guild? That was different, was it? What about the Crimson Daggers? Or the Void Hunters?" The assassin's voice rose slightly, causing several nearby patrons to glance in his direction. 3 entire assassin organizations, Boric, gone. Not disbanded, not defeated, gone. As in, they started hunting humans, and then nobody ever saw them again. The Quellan's image flickered as the transmission wavered. "Those are just stories, Crix. Urban legends that stories." Crix stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "I knew Zek Moonclaw personally. Best tracker in the business. Could hunt a ghost through a black hole. He took a contract on a human colony ship and disappeared 3 days later. They found his ship drifting empty near Proxima Station with no signs of struggle, no bodies, nothing. Just gone. Boric's tentacles resumed their nervous twitching. Look, I understand your concerns, but this is 50 million credits. That's enough to retire on, to buy your own planet if you want. The client is offering full support, complete intelligence files, and no questions asked about methods. The assassin began pacing around the booth, his massive frame casting shadows across the table. Other patrons were definitely watching now, sensing the tension radiating from the corner. Who else have you asked? Everyone. Everyone. Every major contractor in 3 sectors. The hegemony killers said no before I finished explaining the target. The Silent Death cult actually laughed and hung up on me. Even if freelancers won't touch it. Crix felt a chill run down his spine despite the cantina's warm atmosphere. The Silent Death cult were fanatics who considered assassination a religious calling. If they were refusing a contract, there had to be a very good reason. Send me the files, he said quietly. Crix, are you sure? Send them. The hologram disappeared, replaced moments later by a cascade of data that filled the air above the table. Crix studied the information carefully, his compound eyes processing multiple data streams simultaneously. Harrison Chun, age 42, born on Earth Colony Kepler, 442b. Former military, served in the Human Defense Force during the Centauri conflict. Currently worked as a freelance mining consultant, traveling throughout the Outer Rim evaluating mineral rights and planetary resources. Married, 2 children, no criminal record. On the surface, he seemed like exactly the kind of soft target that should be easy work for a professional killer. But as Crix dug deeper into the files, warning signs began to emerge. Chen's military record was heavily classified, with most of his service history redacted. The few details that remained painted a picture of someone who had seen serious combat. Multiple commendations, rapid promotions, assignment to special operations units whose existence was officially denied. More troubling were the recent reports. Chen had been investigating mining claims in the Hadean system when several corporate security teams had attempted to intimidate him into abandoning his work. The teams had arrived with full military equipment and authorization to use lethal force if necessary. 3 days later, all 17 security operatives were found in a remote canyon, stripped of their weapons and tied up with their own equipment cables. They were alive but traumatized, refusing to explain what had happened beyond mumbling about the human in the shadows. Chen himself was nowhere to be found, having apparently vanished into the desert without supplies or transportation. He reappeared 2 weeks later at the spaceport, calm and unharmed, to catch a transport to his next assignment. When questioned by local authorities, he claimed to have no knowledge of the incident and provided documentation showing he had been in a completely different star system when the security teams disappeared. The documentation was flawless. The timeline was impossible. Crix's claws retracted as he continued reading. There were more incidents, each following a similar pattern. Corporate interests would target Chun. Teams of well-equipped professionals would be sent to deal with him. And then those teams would simply vanish or be found in impossible situations with no memory of how they got there. This is insane, the assassin muttered, scrolling through incident report after incident report. How is one human doing this? A new voice answered from directly behind him. Maybe you're asking the wrong question. Crick spun around so fast that his chair toppled over, his claws extended, and his body dropping into a combat stance. Standing behind him was a figure in a dark hooded cloak that seemed to absorb the cantina's neon lighting. The stranger was human-sized, but moved with an unsettling fluidity that made it difficult to determine their exact species. The question isn't how, the figure continued, settling into the booth across from where Crix had been sitting. The question is why you're even considering it. The assassin's eyes darted around the cantina, looking for backup or escape routes. He noticed that the usual crowd seemed to have thinned considerably, and those patrons who remained were pointedly avoiding looking in their direction. Who are you? Someone who's seen what happens when people like you hunt people like Sean. The stranger pushed back their hood, revealing the pale features and dark eyes of a human woman. She appeared to be middle-aged, with short, graying hair and the kind of calm expression that spoke of vast experience. My name is Dr. Sarah Martinez, and I used to work for the Galactic Defense Council's Xenobiology Division. Crix kept his claws extended but slowly straightened from his combat stance. I was part of the team that first recommended humans for protected species status. That was before we understood what we were really dealing with. She gestured toward the holographic data still floating above the table. Tell me, Crix, that is your name, isn't it? What do you know about human evolutionary history? They're primates from a death world, evolved from scavengers and hunters. Not particularly impressive physically. The assassin was confused by the direction of the conversation, but found himself oddly compelled to answer. Martinez smiled, but there was no warmth in it. That's the simplified version, yes. But it misses the most important detail. Humans didn't just evolve as hunters. They evolved as persistence hunters. Do you know what that means? Crix shook his head. It means they would pick a target and simply never stop chasing it. They couldn't run faster than their prey, couldn't overpower it in direct confrontation, so they developed a different strategy. They would follow their target for days, weeks, sometimes months, never attacking directly, never giving up, just following and waiting until their prey collapsed from exhaustion. The assassin felt another chill. That's just primitive hunting behavior. Irrelevant in the modern era. Is it? Martinez leaned forward. Let me tell you about the Shadowclaw Guild. They took a contract to eliminate a human trade negotiator named David Park. Simple job. He was traveling alone. No security, no weapons. The Shadowclaws were confident it would be over in hours. She paused, studying Crix's expression before continuing. 3 months later, guild members started disappearing. Not all at once, not in any obvious pattern. One here, one there, always under circumstances that could be explained as accidents or coincidences. A tracking device failure during a routine hunt. A life support malfunction on a long-range scouting mission. A navigation error that sent someone into an asteroid field. Crix's compound eyes widened. Park was hunting them. But here's the thing. He never killed anyone. Every guild member who disappeared was found eventually, alive, but shaken, in remote locations with no memory of how they got there. They'd been drugged, transported, and left with just enough supplies to survive until rescue arrived. Then, what happened to the guild? Martinez's smile grew even colder. They disbanded voluntarily. Turns out it's hard to maintain an organization when your members are too terrified to leave their home systems. Park had made it clear that he knew who they were, where they lived, and that he could reach them anytime he wanted. The psychological pressure was enough to break one of the most feared assassin organizations in the galaxy. The cantina had grown even quieter, and Crix realized that he and Martinez were now the only customers remaining. Even the bartender had disappeared into the back room. How do you know all this? Because I interviewed the survivors. The Galactic Defense Council wanted to understand what had happened, how one human had neutralized an entire criminal organization without technically breaking any laws. She stood up from the booth. That's when we started to understand the truth about humans. Crix found himself leaning forward despite his better judgment. Which is, they're not just persistence hunters, Crix. Their persistence, everything. When a human decides that something needs to be done, they don't stop. Ever. They'll spend decades planning, learning, preparing. They'll sacrifice their comfort, their safety, even their lives to achieve their goals. And they never, ever forget someone who wronged them. The assassin's clause finally retracted completely. You're saying Chen knows about the contract. I'm saying that the moment someone put a price on Chen's head, he became aware of it. And now he's not just evading capture. He's hunting the people who want him dead. Martinez turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Crix? The 50 million credit bounty? It's fake. What? There is no corporate executive offering 50 million credits. The contract is being offered by Chun himself, using a false identity. He's trying to draw assassins into the open so he can deal with them permanently. She walked toward the cantina's exit. But don't take my word for it. Go ahead and accept the contract. See what happens when you try to hunt something that's already hunting you. With that, she disappeared into the shadowy corridor beyond the cantina, leaving Crix alone with the holographic data and a growing sense of dread. He stared at the files for several more minutes, then slowly reached out and deleted them without reading any further. Some contracts, he realized, weren't worth 50 million credits. Some weren't worth any amount of money. As he left the cantina, the assassin made a mental note to find a new line of work. Something safer, like juggling plasma grenades or wrestling Andromedan deathworms. At least those things fought fair. 3,000 light-years away from Zephyr Station, Harrison Chun sat in the pilot's seat of his modified cargo hauler, studying multiple holographic displays that showed the movement patterns of ships throughout the sector. To any casual observer, the displays looked like standard navigation charts, but Chun was tracking something far more dangerous than asteroid fields or trade routes. He was hunting hunters. The ship's AI, a sophisticated military-grade system he had installed himself, spoke in its characteristic monotone. Motion sensors are detecting incoming vessels at the edge of sensor range. Configurations suggest military corvettes running silent. Chen didn't look up from his displays. How many? 4 ships approaching from different vectors. Classic encirclement pattern. A slight smile played across the human's lips. Right on schedule. The false contract had been distributed exactly 72 hours ago through carefully selected channels, designed to reach the kind of assassins who were ambitious enough to ignore the warnings, but inexperienced enough to take the bait. Chun had been tracking their communications, monitoring their movements, and gently guiding them toward this exact location through a series of carefully planted intelligence leaks. Sir, the AI continued, the approaching vessels are maintaining stealth protocols, but their engine signatures match known as assassin guild vessels. Specifically, the Crimson Tide Syndicate. Chen's smile widened. The Crimson Tide was perfect for his purposes, large enough to make a statement when they disappeared, but not so well connected that their loss would trigger immediate retaliation. They specialized in overwhelming force rather than subtlety, which made them predictable. Display their formation. The holographic chart shifted, showing 4 red dots converging on Chen's position. Each dot was accompanied by technical specifications, ship class, estimated crew size, weapon loadouts. The assassins had brought enough firepower to level a small city, which suggested they had no intention of taking him alive. That was their first mistake. Chun began entering commands into his navigation console, plotting a course that would take him deeper into the asteroid field where this meeting had been arranged. The massive space rocks would provide cover and limit the effectiveness of the assassins' superior numbers. AI, begin implementing Protocol 7. Protocol 7 is active. All non-essential systems are powering down. Emergency beacon is disabled. Flight recorder is now operating in classified mode. The ship's lights dimmed as power was redirected to engines and defensive systems. From the outside, Chen's vessel would appear to be a civilian cargo hauler in distress, broadcasting automated distress signals that would draw the assassins closer. It was an old trick, but an effective one. The first corvette emerged from behind a large asteroid, its weapons systems already charging. Chen could see two more ships moving to flank him while the fourth hung back, probably coordinating the attack. Standard tactics for dealing with a single target. Their second mistake. Incoming transmission, the AI announced. Put it through. The holographic display shifted to show the bridge of the lead corvette. The captain was a hegemony warrior, 8 feet tall, with the characteristic bone ridges and predator's teeth that made his species so effective in combat. His name, according to Chen's intelligence files, was Brutal Fong Kronos, and he had personally killed over 200 sentients. Human vessel, Kronos growled, his voice carrying the natural threat that came with being an apex predator. You were surrounded. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Submit peacefully and your death will be quick. Chen activated his own transmission, making sure his face was clearly visible to all 4 ships. He appeared calm, almost relaxed, sitting casually in his pilot's chair with his hands folded in his lap. Hello, Kronos. Thank you for coming so quickly. I was hoping we could talk. The hegemony warrior blinked in surprise. You know who I am? Of course. Brutal Fong Kronos, captain of the vessel Dread Harvest. Born on Hegemon Prime. Enlisted in the military at age 16, discharged for excessive violence after the incident with the civilian transport. You've been working as an assassin for 8 years, specializing in high-value targets that require significant firepower. Kronos's eyes narrowed dangerously. How do you? I also know that your second in command is a Vorthan named Esike. Your ship's navigator is a synthetic named Unit 7, and your weapons officer is the Quellan pirate called Tentacle Death Moros. Should I continue? The silence on the channel stretched for several seconds. Chun could imagine the assassins exchanging glances, trying to figure out how a lone human had obtained such detailed intelligence on their organization. It doesn't matter what you know, Kronos finally snarled. You're still going to die. Chin's expression didn't change. Actually, that's what we need to discuss. You see, I didn't come here to run or hide. I came here to make you an offer. What kind of offer? The kind where you and your crews get to live through the next hour. Kronos laughed, a sound like grinding metal that echoed through a ship's bridge. 1 human against 4 ships? You must be insane. Chun touched a control on his console, and the holographic display split to show technical schematics of all 4 assassin vessels. The diagrams were incredibly detailed, showing not just the ship's external configurations, but their internal layouts, crew positions, and critical system locations. Let's see, Chin said conversationally, studying the schematics. The Dread Harvest has a crew of 12, armed with class, 7 plasma cannons, and photon torpedoes. Your shields are military grade, but they have a known vulnerability to graviton pulse weapons. Your life support system has a backup failure that your engineers haven't discovered yet. It'll kill your entire crew if your main power core drops below 30% capacity. Kronos had stopped laughing. Chun continued. The Void Stalker, commanded by Captain Zex, has 18 crew members and specializes in long-range bombardment. Excellent ship, but someone installed a black market AI core that has a fatal programming flaw. Under certain stress conditions, it will interpret its own crew as hostile targets and activate internal security systems. On the secondary display, Chun could see the bridge of the Void Stalker, where a reptilian captain was frantically checking his ship's computer systems. The Night Terror, under Captain Venora, is a fast attack vessel with a crew of 8. Very impressive, except that your cloaking device was sabotaged by a disgruntled engineer 3 months ago. It works fine for 30 minutes, then overloads and fries your main power grid. Chen glanced at another display. And finally, the Blood Moon, Captain Nesh commanding. 15 crew members, heavy assault configuration. Your ship is actually in perfect condition, which is why I saved it for last. The silence on all 4 channels was deafening. Ow, Kronos whispered. Because I've been tracking the Crimson Tide Syndicate for 6 months, Chen replied calmly. I know where you dock, where you buy supplies, who you hire for crew, and what modifications you've made to your ships. I know your real names, your family members, your financial records, and your psychological profiles. Most importantly, I know that you're all here because you think I'm easy prey. He leaned forward slightly. That brings us to my offer. You can leave. Right now. Turn your ships around, jump to hyperspace, and forget you ever heard my name. In exchange, I'll forget that you tried to kill me, and we can all go about our business. Kronos found his voice again. And if we refuse? Chen's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. Then, I'll show you why every major assassin guild in the galaxy has a standing order never to accept contracts on humans. For a moment, it seemed like the confrontation might end peacefully. The 4 ships held their positions, weapons charged but not firing, while their crews considered the impossible situation they found themselves in. Then, Kronos made his species' characteristic mistake. He decided to test the humans' resolve. Kill him, he commanded. The Dread Harvest plasma cannons opened fire, sending bolts of superheated energy racing toward Chen's cargo hauler. The other 3 ships followed suit, filling the space around the asteroid field with deadly light. Chen's ship vanished. Not cloaked, not destroyed, vanished. One moment it was there, the next it simply wasn't, as if it had never existed at all. Where did he go? Kronos roared. His sensor operator was frantically scanning the area. I don't know, sir. He's just gone. No hyperspace signature, no debris, nothing. The answer came from behind them. Chen's voice echoed across all 4 bridges simultaneously, calm and conversational. You really should have taken the offer. The assassins spun their ships around, searching desperately for the source of the transmission. What they found was Chen's cargo hauler, sitting calmly exactly where it had been before, apparently undamaged despite the concentrated fire from 4 ships. Impossible, breathed Captain Zex. Our weapons hit him directly. Did they? Chen asked. AI, show them the replay. The displays on all 4 ships showed the attack from multiple angles. The plasma bolts and energy beams had indeed struck Chen's ship exactly where it had been positioned. But careful analysis revealed that the cargo hauler had actually moved, not quickly, not dramatically, but with perfect precision. It had shifted just enough to avoid each incoming shot while maintaining the illusion of remaining stationary. That's not possible, Kronos insisted. No pilot has reflexes that fast. You're right, Chen agreed. No pilot does. But I'm not just a pilot. Before anyone could ask what he meant, the Blood Moon exploded. Not from external weapons fire, but from within. The ship's ammunition storage had somehow detonated, tearing the vessel apart in a brilliant flash of light and debris. Where moments before there had been a ship with 15 living crew members, now there was only expanding wreckage. What did you do? Captain Venora screamed from the Night Terror. I told you, Chen replied patiently. I've been studying your ships for months. The Blood Moon's magazine had a safety flaw that could be exploited with the right gravitational pulse. I've been generating micropulses since this conversation started, waiting for the right moment. The remaining three captains watched in horror as Chin's cargo hauler began to move, not toward them, but in a complex pattern around the asteroid field. He wasn't trying to escape. He was positioning himself. "Sir," the Void Stalker sensor operator called out, "I'm detecting massive gravitational distortions throughout the asteroid field. Whatever he's doing, it's affecting local space-time." Captain Zex studied his readings in growing alarm. Those aren't random distortions. He's creating a resonance cascade in the asteroid field's gravitational matrix. The realization hit all three remaining captains simultaneously. Chin wasn't just evading their attacks. He was using the asteroid field itself as a weapon. The gravitational pulses were causing the massive space rocks to shift their orbits, creating a deadly maze that was slowly closing around the assassin ships. "We need to leave," Venora announced. "Now!" But when the Night Terror tried to activate its engines, nothing happened. The captain looked at his engineering station in bewilderment. The cloaking device just activated automatically. "It's draining power from our main engines. I warned you about that sabotage," Chin's voice reminded them gently. 30 minutes and counting. The Void Stalker was having its own problems. Red warning lights were flashing across its bridge as the ship's AI began identifying crew members as potential threats. Internal security systems came online, sealing blast doors and isolating sections of the ship. "What's happening?" Captain Zex demanded. "The AI core is experiencing a catastrophic failure," his chief engineer reported. "It's interpreting stress responses from the crew as signs of mutiny." That left only the Dread Harvest still fully operational, but Kronos could see the writing on the wall. Somehow, the human had turned their superior firepower against them using nothing but knowledge and patience. "Ow!" he asked again. Chin's ship emerged from behind a large asteroid, moving slowly toward the Dread Harvest. "Because this isn't really a fight, Kronos. This is a demonstration." "Demonstration of what?" "Of why you should have listened to the warnings." Chin's transmission showed his face again, still calm, but now with something much more dangerous in his eyes. "Every assassin guild that's tried to hunt humans has learned the same lesson. We don't fight like other species. We don't rely on superior strength or overwhelming firepower. We study our enemies, learn their weaknesses, and then use those weaknesses against them." The Dread Harvest sensors detected incoming missiles, but when Kronos checked his tactical display, he realized they weren't weapons. They were some kind of delivery system approaching his ship on an intercept course. "What are those?" "Emergency evacuation pods," Chin replied. "Pre-programmed with coordinates for the nearest inhabited system. Your crews have about 10 minutes to get to them before your ships suffer complete system failures." As if summoned by his words, alarms began sounding on all three remaining vessels. The Night Terror's cloaking device was overloading its power grid. The Void Stalker's AI was systematically shutting down life support in sections where it detected mutinous activity. The Dread Harvest backup life support system was beginning its catastrophic failure sequence. "This is impossible," Kronos whispered. "No," Chin corrected him. "This is what happens when you hunt something that's been hunting you for months. Every time one of your ships docked at a station, my people were there. Every time you hired new crew, they went through interviews with my agents. Every piece of equipment you bought, every modification you made, every tactical decision you considered, I knew about all of it. The evacuation pods reached the assassin ships and docked automatically. Emergency systems activated, flooding the vessels with automated announcements about immediate evacuation procedures. You have a choice," Chin continued. "You can use the pods and live, or you can stay with your ships and die. But either way, the Crimson Tide Syndicate ends here. One by one, life signs began disappearing from the assassin vessels as crews abandoned ship. The evacuation pods launched automatically once they were full, carrying the survivors toward the nearest system at maximum speed. Within 20 minutes, all 3 ships were empty. Chun waited until the last evacuation pod was safely clear, then activated a final sequence of gravitational pulses. The abandoned assassin vessels were caught in the resonance cascade and pulled into collisions with the larger asteroids. In moments, 4 of the most feared ships in the Outer Rim were reduced to scattered debris. AI, Chun said quietly. Record a message for galactic intelligence networks. Recording. Chun looked directly into the camera, his expression serious. This is Harrison Chun. 4 ships from the Crimson Tide Syndicate attempted to collect the bounty on my life. Their crews have been evacuated safely to Kepler Station and will be treated according to galactic law. Their ships have been destroyed to prevent future use in illegal activities. He paused, choosing his words carefully. To any other organizations considering similar action, this was me being merciful. Don't make me demonstrate the alternative. The message was transmitted simultaneously to every major intelligence network, bounty board, and assassin guild in known space. Within hours, it will be seen by thousands of potential hunters. Most of them would take the hint. Those who didn't would learn why humans had earned their reputation as the galaxy's most dangerous prey. Chin set course for his next destination, already planning his next move. The false contract had served its purpose, drawing out the amateurs and sending a clear message to anyone else who might be watching. But he knew this was far from over. Somewhere in the galaxy, there were still people who wanted him dead. And eventually, someone would be desperate enough or confident enough to try again. When they did, Chun would be ready. After all, he was human, and humans never stopped hunting. The emergency meeting convened in the depths of space, far from any inhabited system where intelligence networks might detect their gathering. 7 ships hung in perfect formation around a massive space station that officially didn't exist, its construction hidden in the shadow of a rogue planet that drifted between stars. This was Nexus Prime, headquarters of the Galactic Assassination Council, and today its ruling members were facing a crisis unlike any in their 1,000-year history. In the station's central chamber, 7 figures sat around a circular table, each representing one of the most powerful criminal organizations in known space. They came from different worlds, different species, different philosophies of violence, but they were united by a common purpose: profit through death. Today, that purpose was under threat. The meeting was called to order by matriarch Silthara, a Valachian whose species had evolved as apex predators on a world where cunning mattered more than strength. Her 6 arms moved in precise gestures as she spoke, each motion carrying meaning in the complex body language of her people. "We are here because of Harrison Chun," she announced, her voice carrying harmonics that could induce fear in most sentient species. In the past 6 months, his actions have cost our collective organizations over 300 operatives, 47 ships, and immeasurable damage to our reputations. Around the table, the other council members shifted uncomfortably. These were beings who had built empires on fear and violence, but the mention of Chin's name brought uncharacteristic anxiety to their gathering. Lord Cathis, commander of the Stellar Reapers, was the first to respond. His cybernetic enhancements gleamed in the chamber's dim lighting as he spoke. "My analysts have completed a full review of every engagement with human targets over the past decade. The pattern is undeniable. Human contracts have a 93% failure rate." 93%, repeated Overlord Grex, his massive frame dwarfing the others even while seated. The hegemon warlord's bone ridges twitched with suppressed anger. In my 30 years of commanding assassin fleets, I have never seen failure rates above 15% for any target category. Hierophant Morix, spiritual leader of the Death Whisper cult, leaned forward with interest. His pale features seemed to absorb the chamber's lighting as he spoke. Perhaps the question is not why we fail, but why we continue to try. The ancient spoke of certain prey that should not be hunted. Superstition, snorted Admiral Vex, her scarred features twisting with disdain. The former military officer had no patience for mysticism. Humans are primates from a gravity-heavy world. They have no natural weapons, no psionic abilities, no technological advantages we cannot overcome. Shadow Master NYLTH, barely visible even in direct light, spoke from the darkness that seemed to cling to his form. Then, explained the disappearance of entire hunter squadrons. Explain how Chun destroyed 4 ships without firing a single shot. Explain how one human has made our profession appear incompetent to the entire galaxy. The tension in the chamber was palpable. These were beings who ruled through fear and violence, and their inability to deal with a single human was threatening the foundation of their power. Matriarch Silthara gestured for silence. I have called this meeting to address a specific proposal. Lord Cathis, the cyborg activated a holographic projector, filling the center of the table with tactical displays and star charts. Analysis of human behavioral patterns suggests they respond predictably to certain stimuli. Chen's activities have focused on protecting his business interests and eliminating threats to his personal safety. But there is one category of target that humans will pursue regardless of personal cost. The display shifted to show intelligence files on Chen's family, his wife Elena, and their 2 children, Marcus and Sarah, currently living on the peaceful agricultural world of New Geneva. You're suggesting we target his family. Overlord Grex rumbled approvingly. Leverage his emotional attachments. Lord Cathis nodded. Humans form powerful emotional bonds with their offspring and mates. Previous intelligence suggests they will sacrifice themselves to protect these relationships. If we threaten what Chen values most, we can force him to come to us on our terms. Shadow Master NYLTH's form seemed to waver with uncertainty. There are protocols against targeting family members. The galactic community does not react well to such tactics. The galactic community is not paying us 50 million credits, Admiral Vex pointed out coldly. Besides, we're not talking about killing them, just using them as bait. Hierophant Morix had been silent throughout the discussion, but now he spoke with unusual gravity. There are warnings in the ancient texts about this path. Do not wound what you cannot kill, for a wounded predator is more dangerous than any beast. More superstition, Admiral Vex dismissed. We are the apex predators here. The Hierophant's pale eyes fixed on her with unsettling intensity. Are we? Then why are we hiding in the dark between stars, afraid to face one human in open combat? The question hung in the air like a challenge, and for several moments the chamber was silent. Finally, Matriarch Silthara called for a vote. All in favor of Operation Family Bond. 5 hands rose. Only Hierophant Morix and Shadow Master NYLTH abstained. The motion carries. Lord Cathis, you will coordinate the operation. I want Chen's family captured within 72 hours. As the council members began to disperse, Hierophant Morix approached the matriarch privately. You're making a mistake, Silthara. The texts are clear about what happens when humans are pushed beyond their limits. The Valachian's 6 arms moved in a gesture of dismissal. Your texts are millennia old. written by primitive species who had never encountered modern military technology. Whatever savagery humans possessed in their evolutionary past has been bred out by civilization. Orcs studied her with ancient eyes. Have you ever wondered why the texts call them the species that does not yield? It was not referring to their past, Silthera. It was a warning about their future. While the Council of Shadows planned their next move, Harrison Chun was 1,500 light-years away, standing in the workshop behind his house on New Geneva. The building looked like an ordinary garage from the outside, filled with mining equipment and geological survey tools. But beneath the mundane exterior lay one of the most sophisticated intelligence-gathering operations in the galaxy. Chun moved between multiple holographic displays, each showing different aspects of his ongoing conflict with the assassination guilds. His expression was calm, almost serene, as he tracked the movement of ships, analyzed communication intercepts, and updated the detailed profiles he maintained on every major criminal organization in known space. "Daddy, what are you working on?" Chun turned to see his 8-year-old daughter, Sarah, peering around the workshop door, her school bag still slung over her shoulder. For a moment, the hardened operative disappeared, replaced by a father greeting his child after a long day. "Just some business stuff, sweetheart. How was school?" "Ms. Thompson says we're getting a new student tomorrow. She's from off-world." Sarah's eyes sparkled with excitement. New Geneva was a quiet agricultural colony, and visitors from other star systems were rare enough to be exciting. Something cold touched Chen's spine. New students, unexpected visitors, changes to routine. These were all potential security concerns. "Did Ms. Thompson mention where the new student is from?" I think she said something about a mining colony." "Why?" Chen kept his expression neutral while his mind raced through possibilities. New Geneva had no strategic importance, no significant resources, no reason for off-world families to relocate there unless they were trying to disappear, or unless they were establishing a presence for other reasons. "No reason, honey. Just curious. Is Mom home?" "She's in the garden with Marcus. They're planting the new tomatoes." Chin nodded, his mind already shifting into tactical mode. "Sarah, I want you to go inside and start your homework. I'll be in to check on you in a few minutes." As his daughter skipped toward the house, Chin activated his communication array. Within seconds, he was connected to a secure network that spanned dozens of star systems, maintained by operatives who owed him favors or shared his enemies. "Phoenix to all stations," he spoke quietly into his headset. "I need a full background check on any new arrivals to New Geneva in the past week. Cross-reference with known assassin profiles and recent ship movements in this sector." The response came back within minutes. 3 new families had arrived on New Geneva in the past 6 days. 2 were legitimate refugees from civil war in the Altair system. The 3rd was a couple with a young daughter, claiming to be miners seeking agricultural work. The couple's identification was perfect. Their background stories were flawless. Their ship's registration was completely legitimate, which meant they were almost certainly assassins. Chen's fingers moved across his control interface, calling up surveillance data from around his property. New Geneva was a peaceful world with minimal security infrastructure, but Chen had spent years discreetly installing his own monitoring systems. Passive sensors, hidden cameras, gravitational detectors that could track movement within a 50-kilometer radius of his home. What he found made his blood run cold. The new arrivals weren't just on New Geneva. They were positioned at key points around his property. The mining family had rented a farmhouse with clear sight lines to his children's school. 2 other groups had taken temporary lodgings that would allow them to monitor all the major roads leading to Chen's home. A 4th team had set up what appeared to be a geological survey camp in the hills overlooking the town. They weren't here to kill him. They were here to grab his family. Chin's calm expression hardened into something far more dangerous. For months, he had been playing a careful game with the assassination guilds, demonstrating that humans were too dangerous to hunt while avoiding actions that would escalate the conflict beyond control. He had given them warnings, shown them mercy, even provided safe passage for their operatives when they surrendered. That was about to change. Elena, he called into his comm unit, using their private family channel. Code Black. Implement immediately. His wife's voice came back instantly, calm and professional despite the situation. Elena Chun had served as a communications officer in the Human Defense Force before their marriage, and they had drilled for this scenario countless times. Understood. Children are secure. How long do we have? Chin was already moving through the workshop, activating hidden panels and retrieving equipment that transformed his appearance from a simple mining consultant into something far more lethal. Unknown. They're in position, but haven't moved yet, probably waiting for nightfall. Orders. Chin paused for a moment, considering his options. He could evacuate his family, call for official protection, even negotiate with the attackers. All of those choices would keep his loved ones safe in the short term. But they would also ensure that this cycle continued forever. As long as the galaxy's criminals believed that humans could be pressured, threatened, or manipulated, his family would never truly be safe. Elena, take the children to the safe room and activate full security protocols. I'm going to send a message that the galaxy will never forget. Harrison, his wife's voice carried decades of love and understanding. Come back to us. Always, he promised. Chin finished his preparations and stepped outside into the gathering dusk of New Geneva's evening. The agricultural world's twin suns were setting behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. It was beautiful, peaceful, exactly the kind of place where people came to escape the violence of the galaxy. Tonight, that peace was about to be shattered. But when the morning came, every assassin guild in known space would understand a simple truth. Humans protected their families with a ferocity that made their hunting instincts look tame by comparison. Chun disappeared into the darkness between his workshop and the main house, beginning a hunt that would either secure his family's future or ensure that no one would ever dare threaten them again. In the hills above the town, professional killers checked their equipment and prepared for what they assumed would be a simple kidnapping operation. They were about to learn why humans were called the species that does not yield. The first team died in silence. Commander Zeph Carillion of the Stellar Reapers had positioned his squad in the hills overlooking the Chun homestead, confident that their elevated position and military-grade surveillance equipment gave them complete tactical advantage. They were professional soldiers turned assassins, veterans of dozen conflicts across the galaxy, and they had never failed a mission. At 2,347 hours local time, Carillion was studying thermal imaging displays of the Chin property when his communications specialist, Operative Jex, tapped him on the shoulder. "Sir, something's wrong with Voss's position." Carillion shifted his attention to the tactical display showing his team's positions. Voss had been stationed at Observation Post 3, covering the southern approach to the target's home. His life sign indicators showed normal vitals, his equipment was functioning properly, and his position hadn't changed. But he wasn't responding to communications. "Voss, report." Carillion spoke into his headset. Silence. Jex switched to his helmet camera feed. The communications specialist's clawed fingers danced across his control interface. "Feed is active, sir." But the display showed Voss's perspective, apparently normal. He was lying prone behind his sniper position, rifle trained on the Chun house, everything exactly as it should be. But something about the image made Carillion's combat instinct scream warnings. The timestamp, Jex whispered. The feed is 3 minutes old. It's just looping the same footage. Carillion felt ice form in his chest. How long has Voss been unresponsive? For minutes, sir. The commander grabbed his rifle and began moving toward Voss's position, gesturing for his remaining 3 operatives to maintain overwatch. The terrain was rough but familiar. They had scouted this area for 2 days, identified every possible approach route, and established overlapping fields of fire. What they found at Observation Post 3 would haunt the survivors for the rest of their lives. Voss was still there, still in position behind his rifle, apparently alert and ready. But when Carillion touched his shoulder, the operative toppled backward, revealing that he had been dead for at least 10 minutes. No wounds, no signs of struggle, just dead. Ow! Carillion breathed. The answer came from directly behind him, spoken in a calm, human voice. Pressure point strike to the base of the skull. Causes instantaneous unconsciousness, followed by respiratory failure within 6 minutes. Silent, traceless, and completely painless. Carillion spun around, bringing his rifle to bear on empty air. There was no one there, no movement, no heat signature on his thermal sensors. But the voice had been close enough to touch him. "Where are you?" he demanded. "The question isn't where I am," Chen's voice replied from a different direction entirely. "The question is where your other operatives are." Carillion's tactical display lit up with emergency signals. All 3 of his remaining team members were broadcasting distress codes simultaneously, but their life signs were rapidly fading. "Impossible," the commander whispered. They were 50 meters apart, in defensible positions with clear sight lines. "Were they?" Chen asked conversationally. "Or were they exactly where I wanted them to be?" As if summoned by the question, Chen materialized out of the darkness not 10 meters away. He wasn't wearing any special equipment, no powered armor or advanced camouflage, just dark clothing and the kind of calm expression that came from absolute confidence. Carillion raised his rifle, finger on the trigger. "Don't move." "Commander Carillion," Chun said, not moving but not appearing concerned about the weapon pointed at him. "Former hegemony military, dishonorably discharged for war crimes during the Centauri campaign. You specialized in civilian intimidation operations." The assassin's finger tightened on the trigger. "How do you know that?" "I know everything about every operative your organization sent to my world. I know your real names, your service records, your psychological profiles, and your personal weaknesses." Chen took a step closer. "For instance, I know that your rifle's firing pin was replaced 3 days ago with a defective component that will fail to detonate the primer charge." Carillion pulled the trigger. Nothing happened. "I also know," Chen continued, taking another step, "that you have a titanium plate in your left shoulder from an old combat injury. The plate was installed using substandard fasteners that have been slowly corroding. The accumulated stress from tonight's operations should be just enough to cause a catastrophic failure." As he spoke, Carillion felt a sharp pain in his shoulder, followed by the unmistakable sensation of metal shifting inside his body. The assassin dropped his useless rifle, clutching at his arm as the titanium plate separated from his shoulder joint. Finally, Chun concluded, now close enough to touch the writhing commander, "I know that you and your team were supposed to capture my family as leverage. That means somewhere on this world, there are other teams preparing to move against innocent people." Carillion tried to reach for his sidearm, but found his left arm completely useless. "You can't stop all of us. There are dozens of operatives here." Chen's expression grew colder. "Dozens? Commander, you really haven't been paying attention to the tactical situation." The human activated a holographic projector, filling the air between them with a real-time display of New Geneva. Red dots marked the positions of every assassin team that had infiltrated the colony world, each dot accompanied by status indicators and tactical information. Over half the dots were already gray, indicating neutralized targets. Team 7 at the spaceport. Eliminated 23 minutes ago. Team 4 at the communications hub. Eliminated 18 minutes ago. The surveillance specialists monitoring the school. Eliminated 15 minutes ago. Chen's voice remained conversational, as if he were discussing weather patterns. Would you like me to continue? Carillion stared at the display in growing horror. You're one person. This is impossible. Actually, I'm not alone. Chen touched a control on the projector, and the display zoomed in on several locations around the colony. You see, when professional killers arrive on a peaceful agricultural world, the farmers tend to notice. Especially when those farmers happen to be retired military personnel who came here for the same reasons I did. New images appeared, showing human colonists moving through the darkness with military precision. They weren't farmers anymore. They were soldiers protecting their homes. New Geneva has a population of about 12,000 people, Chen explained. Roughly 3,000 are former military personnel from various human conflicts. Another 5,000 are family members of military veterans. When I sent out the call tonight, I had 800 volunteers ready to protect our community within 30 minutes. The assassin commander felt a new emotion creeping up his spine, something he hadn't experienced in years of combat operations. Fear, pure animal terror at the realization that he was no longer the predator in this situation. You turned the entire colony against us. I didn't have to turn anyone, Chen corrected. Humans protect each other. It's what we do. Your people made the mistake of threatening our families on our own world. Carillion tried to run, but found his legs wouldn't support him. The combination of shock, pain from his ruined shoulder, and growing psychological pressure was overwhelming his combat conditioning. Here's what's going to happen, Chun continued, kneeling down beside the collapsed assassin. You're going to send a message to every organization that sent operatives to New Geneva. You're going to tell them that their people are alive but captured, and that they have exactly 24 hours to call off all operations against human targets. And if they refuse? Chen's smile was the most terrifying thing Carillion had ever seen. Then, you'll send a second message, explaining what happened to the teams that didn't surrender immediately. The commander looked around desperately, seeking any chance of escape or rescue. What he saw instead were lights coming on throughout the colony as human families secured their homes and prepared for whatever came next. Children were being moved to safe locations. Adults were taking defensive positions, and elderly veterans were cleaning weapons they hadn't touched in decades. You've turned this into a war zone, Carillion accused. No, Chen replied quietly. Your people turned it into a war zone when they decided to threaten our families. I'm just ending it. As if to emphasize the point, the tactical display updated with new information. The remaining assassin teams were either surrendering or being systematically eliminated by organized human resistance. What had begun as a carefully planned kidnapping operation had become a complete disaster. This won't stop with us, Carillion warned. There are bigger organizations out there, more resources, better operatives. Chun stood up, looking out over the colony where humans were protecting their homes with quiet determination. Commander, do you know what the rest of the galaxy calls this? Calls what? A human colony under threat. They have a specific term for it in the galactic databases. Chen's expression grew distant, as if he were remembering something from long ago. They call it a pacification scenario. It means that diplomacy has failed and the situation can only be resolved through overwhelming force. Carillion felt his blood turn to ice. You're talking about bringing human military forces into this. I'm talking about what happens when you corner a species that spent millions of years learning how to hunt in packs. Chun looked down at the wounded assassin. Every human colony has connections to other human colonies. Every family has relatives serving in the human defense force. Every veteran has friends who remember their service together. The implications hit Carillion like a physical blow. This wasn't just about one man protecting his family. It was about an entire species closing ranks against external threats. "Send a message, Commander," Chen ordered, his voice carrying the absolute authority of someone who had moved beyond threats into certainty. "Tell your employers that they have 24 hours to call off all operations against human targets. Permanently. And if I refuse..." Chen activated another display, this one showing the orbital approaches to New Geneva. Carillion could see ships' signatures appearing at the edge of the system, dozens of them, all broadcasting human military identification codes. Then, in about 6 hours, representatives from a human defense force are going to arrive to discuss this situation with your superiors personally, Chen explained. And, unlike me, they're not interested in showing mercy to people who threaten human families. Commander Carillion stared at the approaching fleet with growing despair. What had started as a simple kidnapping mission had somehow escalated into a potential interstellar incident. "How did you know we were coming?" Chen's smile returned, but now it carried no warmth at all. "Because I've been hunting your people for months, Commander. I know how you think, how you plan, how you respond to pressure. When I started eliminating your ground teams, I knew eventually someone would try to use my family as leverage. So this was a trap. This was a lesson," Chen corrected. "For your employers, for every assassin guild in the galaxy, for anyone who thinks that humans are easy targets." The human knelt down again, meeting Carillion's eyes directly. "We are not the prey in this relationship, Commander. We never were. We were just being polite." As the first human warships entered New Geneva's orbital space, Commander Carillion began composing a message that would fundamentally change how the galaxy's criminal organizations viewed human targets. It would be the last contract any of them ever accepted against a member of humanity, because they had finally learned the truth that humans have been trying to teach them gently for months. Some species should never be hunted, no matter how attractive the price, especially when those species hunted back. 6 months later, the emergency session of the Galactic Security Council convened in the gleaming towers of Centauri Prime, the diplomatic heart of known space. Representatives from over 200 worlds filled the massive amphitheater, their voices creating a cacophony of different languages and communication methods that the universal translators struggled to process. At the center of it all sat the human delegation, 5 individuals in simple black uniforms who commanded the attention of beings whose species had ruled star systems for millennia. The session was called to order by Chancellor Vextar of the Andromedans, his crystalline form refracting the chamber's light into prismatic patterns as he spoke. "We are here to address the situation that has developed regarding human involvement in galactic security matters." The euphemism drew bitter laughter from several delegates. This situation had fundamentally altered the balance of power in the galaxy's criminal underworld, and the repercussions were still spreading. Ambassador Chun stood to address the assembly. Yes, it was the same Harrison Chun who had started this cascade 6 months ago, but his role had evolved considerably. The human who had once worked as a mining consultant now served as Earth's primary representative to the Galactic Security Council. "Honored delegates," Chun began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems, "I understand that many of you have concerns about recent changes in how criminal organizations operate throughout our shared space." "Concerns?" The speaker was Overlord Thex of the Hegemony Worlds, his massive frame radiating barely controlled anger. The entire galactic assassination industry has collapsed. Mercenary guilds that have operated for centuries are disbanding overnight. The balance of power that has maintained stability for generations has been shattered. Chen nodded respectfully. You're absolutely correct, Overlord Thex. The assassination industry, as we knew it, no longer exists. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Some delegates seemed pleased by this development. Others appeared concerned about the broader implications. What you may not realize, Chen continued, is that this change was inevitable. What happened on New Geneva wasn't an escalation. It was a revelation of capabilities that humans have been deliberately concealing for decades. Chancellor Vextar's crystalline features shifted to focus more intently on the human ambassador. Explain. When humanity first joined the galactic community 50 years ago, we made a conscious decision to integrate peacefully. We studied your cultures, learned your customs, and adapted our behavior to fit existing social structures. Chun activated a holographic projector, filling the air above the assembly with statistical displays. What you see here are the actual numbers behind human military capabilities. The data was staggering. Ship counts, troop strengths, technological capabilities, industrial capacity. The numbers painted a picture of a species that could have conquered half the galaxy if they had chosen warfare over diplomacy. These statistics are classified, protested Admiral Kryn of the Stellar Alliance. How did you obtain? We provided them, Chen interrupted calmly. These are our own numbers, shared openly for the first time. We wanted you to understand the choice we made 50 years ago, and the choice we're making again today. The assembly fell silent as delegates processed the implications. Several species that considered themselves military powers realized they were looking at a force that dwarfed their own capabilities. For 5 decades, Chen explained, humans have chosen restraint over dominance. We could have forced our way into galactic politics, seized control of trade routes, or simply taken what we wanted. Instead, we chose cooperation and mutual benefit. Ambassador Silthek of the Centauri Federation leaned forward with interest. And now we're setting new boundaries. Chen's expression hardened slightly. For 50 years, we've been content to let other species handle galactic security, even when that meant tolerating criminal organizations that occasionally targeted human interests. We accepted the occasional loss because we understood that perfect safety was impossible in a galaxy this large and diverse. The holographic display shifted to show incident reports from the past year. Cargo ships attacked by pirates, colonies raided by slavers, assassination attempts against human officials. But when those criminal organizations began targeting human families, they crossed a line that we cannot and will not tolerate. Chen's voice carried absolute certainty. So we've implemented new policies. What kind of policies? Chancellor Vextar asked. Chun touched a control, and the display showed a new document, official, stamped with the seals of Earth's government and the Human Defense Force. As of today, any criminal organization that targets human civilians for any reason will be classified as a hostile military force and dealt with accordingly. The chamber erupted in shocked conversations. The implications were enormous. Humans were essentially declaring war on any criminal group that threatened their people. You cannot simply redefine civilian crime as military action, protested Minister Velo of the Trade Coalition. There are established protocols, legal procedures. Those protocols failed, Chen replied bluntly. The assassination guilds that attacked New Geneva operated openly for decades. They had known headquarters, published price lists, and conducted business through official channels. The galactic community's response was to classify them as acceptable levels of criminal activity. He gestured to the assembly around him. How many of your governments hired assassins over the years? How many turned a blind eye to their operations because it was convenient? How many considered the murder of inconvenient individuals to be just another business expense? The silence that followed was deafening. Every delegate knew that Chen was correct. The assassination industry had been tolerated, even utilized, by supposedly legitimate governments throughout the galaxy. That tolerance is ending, Chen announced. Humanity is serving notice that we will no longer accept the existence of criminal organizations that threaten civilian populations. We are prepared to take unilateral action to eliminate such groups, regardless of their political connections or economic importance. Overlord Thex stood again, his massive form towering over the assembly. You're talking about becoming judge, jury, and executioner for the entire galaxy. No, Chinkerective. We're talking about becoming protectors for anyone who needs protection. The elimination of the assassination guilds has already reduced civilian casualties by 73% across 47 star systems. Piracy incidents have dropped to their lowest levels in recorded history. Slavery operations have virtually disappeared from human-patrolled space. The statistics were undeniable, and several delegates were nodding in approval despite their concerns about human unilateralism. But this is just the beginning, Chun continued. Today, I'm announcing the formation of the Human Protection Initiative. A new document appeared in the holographic display. A comprehensive treaty that offered human protection services to any world or organization that requested them. Any planet, colony, or group that feels threatened by criminal organizations can request human assistance. We will provide military support, intelligence gathering, and elimination of hostile forces at no cost to the requesting party. Ambassador Chuleth of the Rimworld Consortium looked intrigued. What do you want in return? Cooperation with human laws regarding civilian protection. Any world under our protection agrees to prohibit the operation of assassination guilds, slavery rings, piracy support networks, and similar criminal enterprises. The offer was simultaneously generous and threatening. Worlds would receive powerful protection, but they would also have to abandon the gray area criminal activities that many had found profitable. And if we refuse, asked Chancellor Vextar. Chin's expression didn't change, but something in his tone made the chamber grow colder. Then you maintain your current arrangements, and we respect your sovereignty. But you should understand that human civilians will continue to travel throughout the galaxy, and we will continue to protect them. The implication was clear. Worlds that harbored criminal organizations would find themselves in conflict with human forces whenever those organizations threatened human interests. Minister Velo stood to address the assembly. This is essentially a protection racket. Accept human control or face human retaliation. No, Chen replied patiently. This is a choice between two types of protection. You can continue relying on criminal organizations that you pay to intimidate your enemies and occasionally turn against you. Or you can accept protection from a species that has never conquered territory for profit, never enslaved populations for labor, and never committed genocide for resources. The contrast was stark, and delegates throughout the chamber were quietly consulting with their advisors about their government's options. There is one more thing, Chen announced, activating a final display. 6 months ago, Commander Carillion sent a message to every major criminal organization in known space. That message contained an ultimatum with a 24-hour deadline. The assembly watched as communication logs scrolled through the air, showing responses from dozens of assassination guilds, piracy syndicates, and mercenary organizations. 17 organizations immediately ceased all operations against human targets and disbanded their offensive capabilities. 23 more attempted to continue their activities. Chen paused, letting the implications sink in. None of those 23 organizations exist anymore. The silence was absolute. In 6 months, humans had systematically eliminated some of the most powerful criminal enterprises in the galaxy, and most governments hadn't even realized it was happening. How? Whispered Ambassador Tet of the Spiral Arm Confederacy. By treating them as what they actually were, military threats to civilian populations. Chen's voice carried the weight of absolute conviction. When criminal organizations use military equipment, employ military tactics, and target civilian populations, the appropriate response is military action. We simply stop pretending otherwise. Chancellor Vextar's crystalline form shifted as he processed this information. What you're describing sounds like war Chun finished. Yes, but not war against governments or species. War against anyone who profits from civilian suffering, regardless of their political connections or economic importance. The human ambassador looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates from across the galaxy. This is humanity's gift to the galactic community. We're offering to bear the moral burden of eliminating criminal organizations that you've found too useful or too dangerous to address yourselves. And in return, Chancellor Vextar asked, in return, we ask that you remember this choice when you're tempted to use criminal organizations as proxies for activities your governments can't officially support. We ask that you consider the true cost of tolerating systems that profit from civilian suffering. Chen's expression softened slightly, and we ask that you trust us to use this power responsibly. The vote, when it came, wasn't even close. 217 worlds accepted human protection services. Only 12 refused, and most of those were already planning to reconsider their position. As the assembly dispersed and delegates returned to their home systems, a new era in galactic politics began. Crime didn't disappear overnight, but the organized criminal empires that had operated with impunity for centuries found themselves facing an enemy they couldn't intimidate, couldn't corrupt, and couldn't defeat. Harrison Chun stood at the viewing port of the human embassy ship, watching the lights of Centauri Prime spread out below. His wife Elena joined him, their children safely asleep in their quarters. "Do you think we did the right thing?" she asked quietly. Chun considered the question, thinking of all the worlds where families would sleep safely because criminal organizations no longer dare to threaten civilian populations. "I think we did the necessary thing," he replied. "For 50 years, we tried to fit into galactic society as it existed. Now we're showing them what it could become." Elena nodded, understanding the weight of the choice they had made. "And if they decide we're the threat they need to eliminate?" Chen's expression grew thoughtful. "Then they'll learn the same lesson the assassination guilds learned. Humans don't start fights, but we always finish them." In the months that followed, the galaxy discovered what it meant to live under human protection. Crime rates plummeted, civilian casualties dropped to historic lows, and the fear that had haunted peaceful populations for generations began to fade. Some called it the beginning of a golden age. Others worried about the concentration of power in human hands. But everyone agreed on one fundamental truth. The galaxy was a safer place when humans were protecting it. And in the darkest corners of space, where criminals had once plotted against innocent populations, a new wisdom spread among those who survived. Never, ever hunt humans. Because they always hunt back.